Well, hello, Internet. How's it going? This is Rhys with the Mattriarchy coming at you here. I am solo at the moment, the one and only, for whatever various reasons we have. Actually, I know exactly what it is. Doug had some problems and is not able to get here quite yet. And Bill is just getting off work, so he's got to drive home. So it's just me right now. And I don't have a heck of a lot to talk about, but it's the situation there. So I guess I will go ahead and just be here and available if anyone jumps on to jump in the chat to check the whole thing out. It's a whole ordeal. But I'm already 9 minutes after. I thought, might as well just get on here and start chawing. We might try to find my phone. Just gonna try to check up on the other channel and see how we're getting with the old. We're having my mic's too hot. Last week, my mic was very hot, and it was causing me some real problems with all of that. So I don't know what to make of all of it. But there you have it. What is the disable my audio processing? What does that do? I have no idea. Enabling it, that's a thing. So I don't know. I'll have to check the replay and see if I'm horribly hot today. Yeah, last week I had the weirdest thing. My part of the show was just really hot, and my speaker was picking up people's microphones. It's the craziest thing. My computer is supposed to be smart enough to not do that kind of thing. But that was not my experience at that point, so I don't even know what to make of all of it. So, if anyone is in the chat, feel free to shoot me a little note that you're here or whatever, and or if you have questions. I have been very excited recently. We've been working on some projects, and been some good stuff, man. Some good stuff. I've been, but sorry, my brain got all scattered for a second. Sorry, everybody. That's the worst television. So, really, I've got a face for radio, though, so I can't be too mad about it there. But I said Doug's on his way. He said he will be joining shortly. I don't know what shortly means. There you have it. So, for those of you who may or may not know, I will who may or may not follow me on Twitter or the Ideal Comics channel. I will let you know a little secret, which is that it's not really a secret. We've got some projects we're working on. This last week, we started on forcesofgoodandevil.net, which I have a banner. I will showcase that up here. On my webcomic, right there. And one of the fun things about the webcomic is that we are re-uploading all of our archives right now. We had to migrate servers this summer, and so we're uploading a storyline at a time. But the current one that's being published right now is called National Villainy, and it's 120 pages. And rather than trying to upload all of it at once, because you have to do page by page, and it's quite a lot to read in one sitting, we're uploading it by chapter. So it's about 30-page chapters, give or take. And so with that, that's going up. The second chapter going up tonight or tomorrow. And it follows Greg, our hero, our villain student school, our villain school student. My goodness sakes, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my mouth? As he is going through a national villainy competition. It's like a scholastic or a track event for villains, and it's crazy. And they travel across the country from Wisconsin, where the story is set, to Colorado, meet up with a bunch of other villain students that are characters in our universe, many of which actually themselves have complex backstories that we haven't delved into yet. Although, hopefully soon, in the next few years, we'll get into some of that, just depending on how projects work out with it. And yeah, and a whole lot of stuff there. So that, but anyway, the first chapter, which is up right now, you can go read it. Starts with a regular day at villain school, and then Greg finds out he's being taken across the country. And he and his friends, they form the villain team, and they have to head toward Fremont City, and they arrive there, Fremont, Colorado. Now, Fremont is a fictional town in our universe that is a suburb of Denver. That has become a suburb of Denver. It didn't start out that way. It's tucked up in the mountains in between Castle Rock. It's like northwest of Castle Rock and southwest of Denver Metro, south of Golden, that kind of thing. But nestled in the mountains, and it's where Expositioner it's from. In fact, X makes a guest appearance in this story, but not yet. He's in the third chapter. And I will actually, but X was the main character from our crowdfund that we did this weekend, and or this summer, and it was a pretty cool time. But yeah, I'm going to see if there's any additional messages from people yet. No, and no. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I do want to go ahead and share one of the things that I have been working on this week. Actually, this week and last week combined. But for those of you who are watching, you might know, in addition to my fun talk show, I actually do host a webcomic. I mean, this summer, just get back to it. We did a crowdfunding for a comic that is built in our universe, and we had originally called it Tales of Shadow of Vox Populi, but we have changed the title kind of late in the game, I know, but to not Tales of Shadow, but to it's going to be Tales of Shadow Sol Voce for this story, and it's about X and his superheroing and his mystery with monsters and property destruction and investigation and all kinds of stuff. And I'm actually very fond of the story, and I've been working on lettering it. And as we're getting the art all finished up for it, we're still planning on getting that out in March. It's our current date on that. We having some difficulties with that, but hopefully that's all still on track. But I wanted to go ahead and share what I think one of my favorite pages so far, and it's page 4, but I think it's got some really neat stuff on here. So let me go ahead and share the screen, and while we are waiting on people to show up, and nobody. It's crazy. Not only am I the only one here, but I'm the only one here. I'm actually really tempted to stop the banter and just work on stuff, and because I've got scripts that need worked on, and then when Doug gets here, then going from there to it. But I don't know. In any case, here is page 1. I'm sorry, it's page 4. And let me zoom in a little bit here. And you'll see here we have top of the page. And over here, this is actually X in disguise. And Hyperion, one of the other agents who used to work with X, he was employed for Remus Corps. There's Shock, another one. Shock actually was trained under X's tutelage. And this is Lieutenant Kavanaugh, who's a police detective. And in Fremont City, the police contract with local law enforcement contracts with Remus Corps to deal with paranormal threats. And for our definition of paranorm or paranormal within our universe, it's anything that's not normal humanity, right? So superpowers, people with superpowers are called paranormal, whether their powers are magic based or whether they are based in mutation or whether they're aliens or whether they're werewolves or whatever. It's all considered paranormal. And so that's that story. Yeah, so this is this here. I'm just saw something I need to change. Okay. All right. Nice. Sorry. Stop. Thing here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and send a message out here on the Twitter to a whole. Oh my goodness! I don't know. Can you guys? I'm here at the moment. But my dogs are running around upstairs crazy, and that's not normal for this time of night. So that's a real loud ruckus. So that's probably quite awful. Hopefully, it's not picking up too bad, but we'll see. Okay. Remove that from the stream. Um, I'm going to go ahead actually, and since nobody seems to be watching, I get no messages in the chat. My little counter up here says that no one's watching. Okay. There. Bam. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I'm going to mute this myself for a moment and put on my little banner here. I got this. There we go. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to mute myself if I can. I'll be right back. Well, I'm back. So I just heard the bill is nearly here. As thrilling and exciting as that is for all those folks who don't. And once again, I don't honestly. The StreamYard, I'm not sure how accurate it is with people tuning in. There's been times where it's told me there were one person watching, and I've got two different people going on in the chat about stuff. So I don't know if it's accurate. If it takes a while to register, if people clip in and out often enough, that it messes with how it determines all of that. But I don't understand all of that at all because I don't know how it works behind the scenes. So, hello. So that's the right now. We are waiting on Bill. We are waiting on Doug, and to speak of the devil, Bill, how's it going?
It's going okay. How are you?
I am doing okay. Okay. It's a weird night. Doug was supposed to be here earlier, and he had something of a personal crisis pop up here. And so I've just been filling time talking about my webcomic and seeing how interested that is for folks. But
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'm having a better night than a coworker. A guy I work with, he had his car stolen. So that's not.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
At the shop you're there at, or?
No. It turns out he left it running when he ran into 7-Eleven. So somebody jumped into it and took off with a lot of his crap. I felt bad for him until he said that he invited being robbed. I was like, oh, well, that's too bad.
That's crazy. Well, and the funny thing about that is, like, back when I was first on my own, right? This is dating myself a little bit, but the cars that we could all afford were old enough that it was impossible. I should say it was possible to lock your keys in the car and still get into the car because you had one key for the door and one key for the ignition. So you could start your key in the car in the morning and then lock it, and go back in the house, get yourself all ready to go, put on your extra layers, go downstairs, and then unlock the car and drive off. And nobody without a brick could get in there and drive off with the car. But I've had cars that won't let you lock the doors if you're not in the car because the car senses if you're sitting there and that whole thing.
Yeah. I just drove I got T-boned and my last car got totaled. And until I bought something else, I was driving a rental that's got one of those fob things where you just keep it in your pocket and you just show up and push buttons. And I like that, but I don't entirely trust it. It's like, well, this is so electronic, it could totally screw me at some point. So I'm happy
for sure.
to have something with a key.
I have one of those right now. It's got the transponder in it, right? And I'm always afraid that if this battery goes out in this thing, how do I start my car? I mean, if I'm in the middle of if I'm traveling with a fam or something, and I'm in downtown Denver, and I can't start my car because it's not smart enough to know I have the key plugged in. What do I do?
I did. It took me a little while to get used to walking up to the car and not just having it randomly unlock for me. It's like, oh, I have to unlock my own car like some sort of peasant? What the hell's going on here?
All the survival gnomes have left.
Yes. But, it was, I felt sorry for him. He had a lot of stuff in his car, and then he had a key to the store in it. So right when the boss found out about this, he had to have the whole store rekeyed. So he was somewhat unhappy about that. It's like, you lost your car, and that's terrible. But I just got hit with $500 worth of rekeying. Don't do that again. He's got I don't want to say no sense of humor, but a somewhat different sense of humor.
It's somewhat limited.
Yes.
Small list of things.
I think a lot of people are selfish. He's just occasionally a little more obvious about it than others.
Well, he doesn't hire people to make his life more difficult, right?
No.
That's the opposite reason of having employees.
Yeah, I would. You hire people to make your life easier so you can do the things that pays you the most cash.
Exactly.
You don't hire people to see how many hurdles they can throw out in front of you on your day off. He was, we were talking and he said, so did you look at those emails? I'm going to put in an offer and buy all these Star Wars toys and blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I don't look at my work email when I'm not working. He goes, oh, okay. Well, look at that stuff when you get a chance. I'm like, okay. I said, if you want to just throw in some extra money in every check so that I spend another hour or two, off premises, but still working, I'll be happy to do that. But until you pay me, my time is my time. He goes, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
It's reasonable.
Now, this is the shop that you're working at, right?
Yes.
Because you're a busy guy. You do lots of stuff.
Yeah. I do. I like a lot of people in entertainment. I will work a day job, and then in my spare time, I create stuff. So I was doing some restaurant work, and a buddy I'd worked with at another restaurant said, hey, my boss is about to open up a comics and collectible store. They need a comic book guy. So why don't you go talk to him? And I also applied there as a bartender. So I showed up and sat down for a meeting, and we talked for about 5 minutes. We're laughing it up. And I said, am I talking to you about tending bar or the comic book thing? And they said, comic book thing. Okay, well, let's talk about comics then. So I've been kind of failing my way up the chain and demonstrated some competence. And at the time I was working at another restaurant, and I got irritated with them and quit, turned in notice. And when they found out about that, they were like, hey, you want to be a manager? I said, sure. How big a raise is it? So I got a raise, and, I'm working 40 hours, and it sort of reminds me of the original Dirty Harry movie, which pops up on Netflix next month. In the first movie, he's got a partner, and he sees Harry go through, all this terrible stuff at work. And he says, I think I figured out how you got your name. You get every crap job here, don't you? And essentially, that's the benefit that I provide at work. I file records, I file comics, I priced and graded and put out 20,000 comics. Now I've got another guy who grades stuff just for me to, whip all the inventory into shape. And it's just, it's like one of these weird never-ending battles. I work for a guy that's sort of like a dragon. He has a horde, and we have still 2 pallets of records to go through and probably 15 pallets worth of comics to go through. And when I say pallets, I don't mean like, look, there's 2 or 3 boxes deep on those. It's more like, no, it's like 4, 5, 6 long boxes deep per layer per pallet. So we've got a lot of comics still to go through. Wow. So I have a certain amount of job security.
Yeah, as long as you keep moving the product, that's the big thing.
Yeah, we're working on it. We do sports, records, comics, toys. I got us a diamond account, and we have a Sideshow collectibles account. So, one day I'll show up and we'll, price and put out a bunch of Magic cards. The next day we'll unpack a bunch of Marvel statues and put them in cases. So it's an interesting job. I get to do a lot of different stuff. But when I'm not doing that, I'm making comics. So this week, I finished a fill-in script for Punchline. I finished lettering Punchline 10 and got that off to my editor. And with that time freed up, I've been, since then I've been doing a little bit inking on some projects coming up down the road.
Which actually that brings up, I have a couple of questions on their thing. So you are in the part of the reason that I had you on today is you guys are of course fundraising. Right now you have on Indiegogo for the
second trade, the Super Frenemies book is up on there. Yeah.
And I will get the link here and share that.
That's cool. I appreciate it.
On the screen as well as in the chat for people to go ahead and click on it there. But I should have had that ready to go, but I don't.
I haven't been flogging it a lot. We could work a little harder on it, but we hit our number, and I think sometime this week we'll probably surpass what we did on the first crowdfunding round. But I wanted to do both of the big crowdfunding sites. So we did Kickstarter first because that's in their rules. If you drill down into the rules, they say, we're not gonna take any projects that have been somewhere else first. So we went there first, and then we went to Indiegogo because we got a lot of support from people on that platform last time, and we wanted to make the book available to them. So we, while we hit our number that we need for the printing bill, we're selling some copies on Indiegogo, and I think we may leave that store open a little bit once the campaign shuts down.
And this is going to be 6 through 10 from the Arctic run, right? Plus, I'm guessing, right?
That's 6 through 10. Those are a bunch of one-shots. The Super Frenemies title comes from the fact that Jesse, TV's Versima, has a love-hate relationship with all the people in those books. So she sort of gets along with her mentor. Her dad is in one of the books. There's a character called Atomic Butterfly. There's that Rose Vera character. And then there's some, I was going to say Killer Robots in 10, but there's a surprise guest star who's actually on the cover of 10. The Black Arrow character from the first issue shows up again in the 10th issue. So she, we've built out the world a little bit, and now we're going to get ready. The script that Matt's working on now is for Punchline 11, and that is Jessie finally gets her test to see if she can keep the Versima powers, and that's kind of fun.
Which actually was my question, was I didn't know if you guys were running right into the next set of issues, or if you guys were going to end up taking a break, or how that worked on.
Matt's working on 2 or 3 other projects right now. He's working on...
He's a busy guy.
Yeah. He's working on Doug Ernst's new book, and I think there's some other new book, and he does a whole bunch of covers for other people. So, our projects are coming out a little slower because when it comes to Matt's comic book time during his day, he's not 100% focused on Punchline at the moment, which, we did the book to raise our profile so that we could get other gigs, and I got a writing job that I finished and invoiced for. Matt's working a lot on different comics projects, and so there's some good and bad with that.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's such a fun title. I just didn't know if you guys had how long term your plans went with all of that. That's
I tend not to think that far ahead because I like kind of the joy of discovery when you're working with characters. So, for example, there's a 2-part test where Jessie figures out if she gets to keep her powers or not, and Mel, of course, shows up and kind of ruins things the way that she does. I like writing her as kind of the skunk at the garden party. And then we've got a 2-part Halloween thing that I wrote that we just haven't found a place for. I wrote an all chibi issue, which is pretty weird. So I think I'm about 5 scripts ahead when it comes to stuff Matt's working on. And then I wrote a fill-in story. And that fill-in story I'm inking over Leandro Oliveira, who had done some Pathfinder books for Dynamite. And the books that he did are really pretty, and he works with an agent. I've been working with a lot of people in the Adventist studio on different projects. So I wrote a script for him based on basically my idea for a Bond story. And it's interesting when you stick a superhero in a spy story, they just kind of blow it up. But that's essentially what Mel likes to do. So there's not but 2 or 3 Jesse panels in there, but it's a whole lot of Mel screwing stuff up. Anyway, at one point when they announced that they were going to have a female version of Bond, I thought, oh, that's cool. If you look at Goldfinger, there were 9 of the 00 agents sitting around, and it just happens to be 7 who's the smart guy in the room, and he figures out what Goldfinger's up to and goes and, murders him. But at one point, in the Bond lore, there's a whole bunch of those agents running around. I thought, it'd be kind of cool if they had Bond, in a mental institution or drugged out somewhere, and an agent shows up and, pulls him out of a hole in the snow somewhere in Siberia. And then Bond finds out that somebody, took him out of the world for a while and he wants revenge. So it's it would be a battle of wits between the new agent and 007. And, you introduce a new character that way in kind of a friendly, we're all in the same team kind of way. And then I found out what they're doing. I'm like, well, that's stupid. Good for them. But then I liked the idea of an agent trying to stop another agent from getting revenge or something like that. So I thought, I can probably still use part of this. As most writers, they don't really throw anything away. They just recycle stories endlessly. So I thought, how can I do this? So sure enough, it's a full-on spy story with Mel stuck in the middle of it. So there's a getaway with a delivery truck. There's a whole bunch of people getting shot by Mel. There's a monstrous villain. There's martinis. There's sex. There's getting away from an explosion via zip line. It's a full-on spy story, but with the cranky old mentor from Punchline.
So is this in like current times, or is this like a flashback story?
It's modern.
Okay.
There are things that come out in the issues with Jessie getting her test, and you find out a little bit more about Mel and why she's a giant pain in the ass. And the deal that she has worked with the agent's boss is if she gets the agent out of whatever trouble he's in and sets him down in front of her, then Mel would get access to the British spy archive. She's trying to figure out how somebody wronged her in the past. So what Mel wants is the key to that giant living file cabinet. And the agent has no desire whatsoever to talk to his old spy master. So there's a little bit of 007, there's a little bit of Prisoner in there, and there's a whole lot of people shooting each other and just doing terrible stuff all the time in the spy thing. But no, it's continuity post 12, so it may be 13 or 14 depending on how fast I can get the thing inked, because I'm inking Leandro on this, and his stuff looks a lot like Ed Benez's work. So it's busy, and it's the kind of thing that I'm not really used to doing a whole lot. So I'm having to put in a lot of time on these pages to get them inked.
Now that's actually a really interesting situation too, because not a lot of writers are also inkers.
Yeah.
Right? That's not something that you see a super heck of a lot.
No, there's a few of us, and mostly it was from necessity, as in I had a DC editor tell me not too long ago saying, I got nothing for you. I got guys that are really good that I can't get work for. I was like, oh, dude, thanks. Inkers, yes, inkers get no acclaim, no slap on the back. It's more like, I think they're looked at as more of a, hated necessity at this point. But comics as an industry is set up to make the trains run on time, and inking is kind of one stop in that process. When I was getting the pages for Punchline 10 finished, I was doing kind of a big rewrite on it as I'm going along. So on that issue, I'm also the letterer on the book, so I get to figure out what dialogue fits, what dialogue keeps people on character. So Matt does the line art on it, and we have a guy named Nestor Radulla who does the color work on it now, and I think I do all of the rest. So it's keeps me busy.
Yeah, no, I've done. When we started doing our webcomic, Chris and I, way back in the day, I ended up being the inker because Chris had a better sense of he's able to put the pages together. In terms of like layout and stuff.
Yeah.
But he didn't have any of the like sense of shadow and that kind of thing. So I ended up, and I'm not great at like just drawing from scratch. Neither of us were good artists. We were just writers who wanted to make a webcomic. So we just drew for the sake of it.
Well, that's the great thing about the internet. If you've got a cell phone or a piece of paper and internet access, you can start doing webcomics. I've done some webcomics for a while in a couple of different formats, so I'm used to doing a whole lot of it. And I didn't know how Leandro was going to do on his breakdown, so I broke down the first 3 pages for him and sent him breakdowns. I said, hey, here's what I was thinking of as I was writing the script. So, if you want to use that as breakdowns, cool. If not, if you want to redo that work, go ahead and do that. But it's been interesting seeing him pencil from my breakdowns. I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good. He improved the crap out of that. Good for him. But he.
So do you have any like formal education, or was it just sort of a thing where you just started picking up a pencil one day and we started working at it?
Early on, it was pick up a pencil and do god awful imitations of the people I liked. But I eventually ended up getting an art degree from UT, and I spent a lot of time drawing naked people in college. And then when I got out, I was an inking assistant for a guy named Keith Wilson. Keith had come off of a run as an assistant editor at DC, and he and his buddy wrote a thing, and they sold it to DC as a miniseries, and he really needed me to come in and do backgrounds for him. So I started doing backgrounds on this book called Hammerlock. That was Chris Sprous's first big series. So, I murdered backgrounds on Chris Sprous's first, long projects that he'd worked on. He had fit in a Batman annual before that, but, I've been inking off and on since the 90s, and, I've been kind of knocking around comics for a while, and I've, self-published a bunch of books. And I'll duck in and out of comics as I like it. I've written a bunch of screenplays I haven't been able to get produced, and I like telling stories, and sometimes they work for comics, sometimes they work for other stuff.
Right. So, well, cool. There was a question. What did I have? Okay. Shoot. I can't remember it.
I put up a page of Leandro's layouts on Twitter today. Okay. And there's a scene where Mel is pushing the agent away from trouble in a wheelchair, and basically every time somebody sticks their head around a corner, she just shoots them right in the face. So it's the murderous mentor that we saw in Punchline. I think it's 2, because Punchline 2 has the big twist in it. Once upon a time, I had a friend ask me, he goes, "Man, there's that great twist in Punchline where Mel does something horrible and you see her in a different light. Why wasn't that in the first issue?" I'm like, I didn't think of it until later. I thought of it in much smaller chunks, and by the time the ball was rolling, I'm like, I knew that the mentor was not going to be exactly a squeaky clean character, but maybe I can just have her do something awful every once in a while. That would be fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, from her perspective, because it's all about what's the word I'm looking for? Expedience.
Yeah.
She has these bigger goals, and her goals, and I'm not going to say that I know whether their goals are good or bad. I just know that they're goals, right? But I think
that she looks at the world in terms of effectiveness, and that she doesn't really think about things in terms of traditional morality. You get, we'll peel back the onion of her background a little bit here and there, but she's essentially a refugee, so she has a very different look at the world in terms of use of force. And when she judges somebody as being a bad person, it's like, all right, the world's a better place without you in it. Pop. And that's it.
Well, it's one of the interesting things too, and I don't personally like on an emotional level relate to the refugee mindset.
Yeah.
Although I know that because I've never been a refugee, is what I'm saying. I mean, I understand actually some of the stuff. I've read on it, and but you never. It's at that point, it's a survival first mentality.
Yeah.
Right. And and I have been in a situation where, like, back in my early 20s, I was homeless for a little while.
Yeah.
And this is by way of simile, right? But I was homeless for a little while, and I went through about 6 months where I just wasn't sure where my next meal was coming from. So anytime I had a chance to eat, for a time I visited somebody's house, I would eat everything I could.
Yeah. That's practical.
Exactly. Just one of those things where, like I may be hungry tomorrow. I may only be able to afford, to live off quarter moon pies that were left in the break room at work.
Yeah.
Because I've got to pay rent, and I've got to pay my student loans and whatever else. And I went from being homeless to being in living in an apartment and just barely making any money at all, right?
Yeah.
And right after each other. And so I had these weird survival tactics that I built up. And in my mid-20s, I realized that I was still eating like a homeless person.
Well, if you look, if you look at it,
I was in my late 20s. I was putting on all this extra weight because I was eating every food I had the opportunity to eat, and I didn't have a teenage boy's metabolism anymore.
Yeah.
So
if you look at a character like Batman, it's easy to psychoanalyze that character at a very base level.
Yeah.
And Batman keeps murdering the people that murdered his parents, even though he can't bring them back, no matter how many people he, dangles off of rooftops and then, hustles over to jail. Mel's just kind of taken the next stop. She's seen how awful people can be in person. And once she judges you as awful or having awful potential, she just sees no reason that you're still in the gene pool. So it's, she has a different way of looking at the world. And that is summed up in Punchline 10. As a couple of people basically give kind of a meta commentary on her. Mel's got a survival instinct and a thirst for vengeance, but that's not the way the world works anymore. Maybe we need somebody who's got some more empathy.
So 10, has that been to press yet?
It is not. I'm still waiting on my editor's notes on that. That's the one I finished lettering this week.
Okay.
It runs 22 pages. It's pretty late. We are getting some pages done. I think we've got 4 or 5 pages of line art done on 11, which is due out this month. But no, the people at Antarctic Press were very happy to find out that we'd finished it, and very happy to find out that I'd be sending it to them soon. But no, this is a book that it's months late. But that's the reason I'm doing the fill-in. The fill-in will probably drop in after 12, so it's probably penciled in at 13, but we'll see. It kind of depends on how fast I get it done. But I'm trying to build an interesting set of relationships. There's big secrets about Jesse and Mel that come out in 11 and 12, and you get to see them in sort of a different light. I really hate that whole everything you knew was wrong impulse that writers have.
Mm-hmm.
But Mel acts a certain way, and by the end of 12, I got a pretty good idea why she acts the way that she does.
I think it's one of those things where everybody has seen those pictures or read those stories that have that big twist in it, Unusual Suspects, right?
Yes.
Or The Usual Suspects, and it's one of those things where you're just like,
yeah. And then you look back, and the thing about good drama is that it's surprising and inevitable. It's inevitable that a guy who was that clever and that good a liar will lie if he's captured, and surprising when you find out that the whole story you've learned up to this moment is bullshit. So,
and then the real question is, obviously not all of it is, right?
Yes.
Which pieces are? And I remember the first time I saw The Usual Suspects, I just sat there being like, okay, that part seems reasonable.
Yes.
Part's nonsense.
Yep.
I don't even know. Let's watch the movie again.
Yes.
Because that's how old I am.
The thing that I like about that movie is I really enjoyed the Richard Stark Parker novels, and at one point somebody who has crossed Parker sees him and they see each other, and there's that moment of, oh my God, you're going to kill me, aren't you? Yes. And the guy starts boarding up his house like there's a hurricane about to hit his house, because he knows that Parker's basically a force of nature. And I really like that about the Kaiser Soze character. Once people find out, oh my God, he's coming to get me, they know that that's pretty much it. I like that inevitability about, just how terrifying some fictional characters are.
Yep. I think that's what gives it real power. Well, the reason I bring it up is it's one of those things where when you're a writer, or you want to be, you have these huge emotional impacts as a viewer, right? And then you're like, okay, so I want to be able to do that to somebody. I want to get into somebody's head and just ring it out a little bit,
Yeah.
But it's really hard, I think, to do that. And you have some twists, like in stories, that work really, really well.
Yeah.
And some twists that are just like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to determine sometimes which is which, right?
Yes.
Because when it's your idea, of course you're you're in love with it because it's your idea, right?
Yeah, I did a pretty big rewrite in Punchline 10 to make a character more sympathetic because this character does something terrible later. I wanted it to be more shocking and less telegraphed. Yeah, the way that you handle people, can change over time. The thing that I didn't like about the original Star Wars trilogy is just how Darth Vader is this cute Uncle Vader by the whole thing's over with. Which, I mean, the thing that I liked about the end of Rogue One is they showed what a terrifying bastard Darth Vader was, as he just walks through this ship murdering everything in his path. I'm like, well, there's the guy who's the right hand of the Emperor. Good for him. I really enjoyed that turn on it. They did the same thing in the Marvel comics with the Vader Down book, which I highly recommend. It takes place in between, I hate saying this, but Star Wars 4 and 5. And it's got Vader crash landing on an alien planet. And the rebels decide, if we can just kill Darth Vader, the Emperor's henchman, we'll be that much farther ahead. And they just picked the wrong fight. And it's that terrifying Darth Vader that I know and love, and I just love that book. It's just such an awesome book.
So that's called Vader Down. Is that?
It's Vader Down, and they've collected him into, I think, a trade paperback, and he's just one scary bastard.
Wow.
He's got the feeling that, hey, that kid that blew up the Death Star, there's something special about him. I want to find that kid. And somebody gives him a lead on where he is, and he's training with the rebels, and just there's a huge body count from there on out. It's such an awesome book.
Cool. That does sound fun. I actually always thought that I know what you mean about the Uncle Vader thing by the end of the thing, but I just is one of those things where because I went into it kind of knowing the story, I think there's some stuff that's in the background that kind of hints at Vader's level of evil.
Yeah.
That's meant to be suspenseful. That I think that also I think it's easy to forget when that he turns back to the light at the end.
Yes. Like I said, that's the thing I love about the end of Rogue One. You see, there's a stark contrast to, him being saved. It's like, it's a really terrifying before picture, in other words.
Indeed. So, in the chat, Easy Bake Coven said that he has read Vader Down, and it's a freaking great read. So,
oh, yeah. True.
Dug Garrett has joined us.
What's up, guys?
Hi, Doug.
How's it going, man?
It's going. I'm a little late. Yeah. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. It's the first 15 minutes of the show were just me yakking at the screen. So I don't think anyone was here, though, so we're not really down anything. So
yeah. I've got a friend that was supposed to do a table read tonight, and he was going to be running late because he was closing the shop with me. And his table read started at 7:30, and he's in the back part of the script, and he's got one line. I'm like, oh man, you're gonna wait a long time to say these pretzels are making me thirsty. That's brutal. And by 8:00, he was still the only person who had kind of Skyped in to do the table read from a distance. He goes, I said, that's actors for you. That's why it's hard to make anything. Not a timely group, if you know what I mean.
Well, and what was it? Oh, before we get going on to other questions, I did want to go and say to those of you guys who are in the chat, thank you for coming. But one of our regulars, the Metal, who has a web comic called Ex Daedalus Chaos, he's over on Drawn a Quarter Fan Edition doing Final Fantasy characters.
Awesome.
I don't want you to leave and go watch that. But if you want to leave and go watch that, tell the Metal hello.
And, you don't have to do that. You can just open another window. We have fractured our attention span. You can have 2 or 3 things going at one time.
That's true. That's true. You can pop out the screen and watch both of us. Just mute one of them, please. But yeah, so Doug, I appreciate you coming. I know that you had some stuff come up. I don't know if you want to tell the story or not, but that's a bad day.
Well, my brother, he buys wrecked cars. That's kind of his thing, and he rebuilds.
What does he do with them?
He rebuilds them and sells them. That's his job. He works for himself. But occasionally somebody will hit him up and go, "Hey, I bought a car. Will you haul it back or drive it back for me or something?" So he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to get this car tomorrow, and this guy bought one. He said he'd pay you $50 to drive it back to town." I'm like, "Okay, cool. $50 just for driving a car, I'll do it." So we go and we pick up the car and I get in it and I take off. I pull out, go up the road. As soon as it hits 2,000 RPMs, the car just violently shakes and stutters. And so I slow down, give it more gas, slow down, get more gas. And apparently the trans was out. He only had first gear. So he would only go 20 miles an hour.
Oh.
So I was like, I can't drive this all the way back. And we just happened to get lucky that one of the guys that my brother does business with was there picking up some cars and had an extra spot on his trailer. So, but that kind of ruined my whole day. It put me, I was supposed to be home hours ago because I was just going to drive the car straight home. And it didn't work out that way.
That's life.
Yeah. It happens.
So
I just felt bad because last time I was supposed to be on the show, I got the flu that day and was sick for like a week and missed the show. And I felt bad. I was like, I can't miss another show. It's
and you didn't. But I had a not the same story, but this has been, this is probably 14 years ago now. I was at I had a job where I was taking a bunch of kids to a youth retreat for an advisory council thing that I was part of, and it was in Kansas, and so it's a 10-hour drive from here, right? And so we're heading down the road, and we get about 30 minutes outside of Scotts Bluff, and the upper radiator hose just explodes.
Nice.
So we're stranded on the side of the road with nothing we can do. It's so hot. Well, I ended up flagging a dude by, and he drove me to Scotts Bluff, and we bought a new radiator hose, and I took it back to the thing because we have to drive it back, And I don't know what else was going on with it and everything else. And we were able to. It was so hot that we couldn't get enough water to fill the radiator with on the side of the road. we could only drive 5 minutes, and then the thing would overheat again because there was so much air in the system.
Yeah.
From that, so we ended up having to walk probably 30 minutes up the road to find somebody who had a house, and who would let us get some water in buckets, and took 2 or 3 trips back, and it wasn't a full half-hour walk. But it took us a while to find somebody who was home, because it was 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning or whatever it was, and it was just a mess. But yeah, so that was a similar thing in terms of one of those things where what the heck are we gonna do?
Car travels are not fun.
I've been on those trips. I rode a motorcycle for years, and a buddy of mine, Bill Willingham, had a van, and every so often I'd have to call him up and go, "Hey man, I'm by the side of the road, about 20 miles outside of town. My piece of crap motorcycle broke down." He was a trooper about it. He'd show up and help me get my stupid bike into his van, and we'd haul it to a shop somewhere, and we'd get it fixed and go on from there. But when you're poor, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, it does.
It's one of those things that keeps you poor too.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where, like, when I was that level of poor, I did all of my own auto repairs. Just in that way, I didn't have to pay somebody else for it. And I could save that $100. You know.
Yeah.
Anything that didn't require a welding torch, I did my own myself.
Yeah. I had a piece of crap Fiat for a while, and I got really good at changing out the thermostat on it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was a bit like bad surgery. You had to take out the radiator, you had to take out a bunch of stuff, and then get under it to pull the right stuff out and get something new in there. It's working on tiny little foreign cars after working on the cars in the 70s is a completely different world.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you. I'm 6'2". This is really thrilling for those of you guys who are watching. I'm 6'2". I'm kind of a big guy. I'm not huge, but I'm big enough that, like, getting my hand into stuff is a pain on foreign cars. Where it's actually, like, I had a buddy who had his starter went out on his little Isuzu Trooper, and in order to mount the thing, I had to hug the engine and thread the bolts with foam. It took me 6 hours to change that starter out.
That's awful.
Yeah. Well, I did get paid $50, so
that's good. I hope that was a lot of money at the time.
It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was a friend,
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, Doug, how have you been other than your bad day, I suppose?
I've been pretty good. Even though it wasn't an ideal day, it wasn't really bad. Just a lot of waiting. But things been going well. I'm helping old 6 Scale Combat with his comic book. I don't know if you've seen that all over the Twitters.
Yes, and dude, I gotta say your little theme song for the video is amazing. Tough, man.
That he wanted something with a 70s feel, and I was like, man, what are 70s songs about? And I was like, they're about rocking and rolling. So I just wrote a song, just pulled the lyrics right out of my butt. It's like, let's write a song about rocking and rolling. And it worked out.
Yeah, it's
that's good. There was a little that's good. There was a little window in the 70s where the music was about being on your CB and driving your truck across the country. It could have gone a completely different way.
Could have been completely different.
Comedy novelty song.
Yeah.
But,
that's right.
I think it's great.
One piece at a time by Johnny Cash. Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh, that song makes me crazy.
Dude, I love that song. I'm not even kidding.
I could have wrote Convoy 2.0 there.
So, but yeah, it's a fun one, and I really did. I really like the song. I think the video looks good. Six's art looks great. Tell us a little bit about that story. What's the deal with the Napalm Brothers?
Well,
he's launching it soon, and he can talk about it. But you're here.
There you go.
I don't want to give. He let me read it, and I enjoyed it. So I don't want to give too much away about his story. But it's about 2 Marine Corps vets who served in Vietnam. They've come home, and you know how vets were treated in the 70s. So they're a little, they've got rough edges. They're not super happy about the way things went down, the way they've been treated. But, while they're adjusting to life and dealing with everything after the war, they get news that something happened to one of their comrades that they served with. So they go to investigate his death. And it's the way I explain the book, or the way it seems to me, is like one of those 70s like B-movie grindhouse things where it's just ridiculous action. There's a gorilla in it. It's
so like Ghostbusters kind of gorilla, or like like any which way you can ape action.
It's not like that, surprisingly, because usually, if a gorilla pops up, it's stupid.
Right.
It's weird that a gorilla's here, and he done it just because it was a 70s book,
Mm-hmm.
But the gorilla is nothing more than just a regular gorilla. He's not like super powered or solving mysteries, or he's not the comedic relief or anything like that. He's just a gorilla. It's like, hey,
I would like
gorilla.
to just interrupt for just a second about apes solving mysteries. Am I the only person on the planet who thinks Detective Chimp is a horrible idea?
No.
And
I sort of like it, but I'm biased. I worked on a Detective Chimp comic. I did some backgrounds on one of those once upon a time.
I wouldn't mind it if it was like an enclosed thing and didn't intersect with anything else.
Yeah.
Actually, making Detective Chimp like a part of the Justice League.
Yeah.
I mean, I can forgive lots of stuff, but not.
I think that kind of character works best on the edge of things. And if you look at the original Detective Chimp stuff, it spun out of the the wackiness of the '60s. I think there's a way to make it work, but yeah, he shouldn't have one of the decoder rings or whatever they use to break into each other's houses. It should just be like, oh, here's something really stupid. Let's go talk to Detective Chimp.
Yeah.
But it's like I recently read the Batman 1000, right, or the Comics 1000, whatever it was that was out last year, and like it's like Tom King. I think it was a Tom King story. Like Detective Chimp's the greatest detective in history, and I'm like, I'm just no, you son of a bitch.
Well, to me, it's two super friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and like some of that stuff I don't mind, right? Like the Angel and the Ape series, like every iteration of Angel and the Ape, I've loved. Like it's so fun, but it's also like its own little pocket thing and doesn't belong. It kind of belongs with this rest, but it also doesn't. Like you can read, like you don't have to think about Sam Simeon being a private investigator in San Francisco when you're reading about Bane taking over Gotham City. They're unrelated. I mean, you don't have to suspend all of your disbelief for that to be part of the universe. But for Detective Chimp to be the greatest detective in history, you do. And it's like, I guess I'm just going to read My Little Pony forever.
Well, that's the downside of having too tightly an intertwined universe. The thing is, okay, I've worked at a lot of different places. I worked a lot of different crap jobs, and I worked with a guy who couldn't stop telling us how smart he was. And I told him, Duke, eventually you're going to have to demonstrate that and not just tell us about it.
I don't think I ever worked with you.
Yet. The thing about, calling somebody the world's greatest detective, there better be some great detecting as a payoff for that setup. So I think that, too tightly wrapping these shared universes around each other, you have people stepping on each other. It'd be funny for Batman to just be standing there and say, hey, standing right here, stop paying attention to the monkey. But those things, you have to be pretty deft and make that work in a Marv Wolfman kind of way.
Yeah, well, I think like if you look at I can't remember who wrote it. But there was one of the anniversary issues in the 80s that I went and sought out has Batman gets into a case, like a series of cases. And so he's side by side with Elongated Man in one part of it. And he's side by side with not Sam Spade.
Sergeant Steele.
No, I don't, may have been that one. I can't remember. But several different detectives. And it ends up being at the end of it that he actually meets Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that was kind of cool, but it was one-off things. It wasn't one of those things where you were expecting Sherlock Holmes to show up, next episode,
Yeah, if Detective Chimp is in a Justice League, do they actually have a cutoff?
Yeah.
It's like, we got a talking monkey. What the hell? Here's your ring. Meetings are on Tuesdays.
Oh, that's fun stuff, man. That's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, Neo, whatever happened to Elongated Man? Elongated long story, a little bit. Identity Crisis in the early aughts, and I'm going to forget the writer's name right now, but he basically went through with, in order to tell the story, the retcon that in the early days of the Justice League, Dr. Light broke in to one of their bases, I can't remember which one it was, and raped Sue Dibney, and then because it was so terrible, and he got caught by the Justice League, and it was so terrible, and they'd wrecked everything so bad, and he'd figured out their secret identities, so they talked Zatanna into mind wiping everybody, and Batman wasn't on board, so he got mind wiped too, and Barry Allen and Hal Jordan and Ollie Queen had been keeping this a secret for like a decade. And then slowly people had started to kind of half remember things, and that led to Dr. Light breaking in again and murdering Sue. And then there was a big mystery, and it turned out that Batman, because of the damage to his subconscious, had been developing these killer robots to take over the world in case the Justice League turned on him. And they broke the DC universe. And so then
I think that was Brad Meltzer.
Yeah, Meltzer, who I love his novels.
Yeah.
I really
smart guy.
But it was a grave disservice to continuity for this story. And I know you were talking about Bill about not having too tight a continuity.
Yeah.
Tight continuities over the core stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all of the Justice League was compromised except for Batman, and Batman was a crazy person who developed the Brother Eye satellite, which created an army of semi-sentient robot overlords, and called the OMAC Project, which was bastardized from a story that Kirby had that was a DC story but wasn't supposed to be part of the mainline continuity. And Elongated Man was so tore up that his wife was dead that he killed himself with a ghost gun so that he could find her, and not so he could seek out her spirit, which was restless on the earth somewhere, and they could live together forever as ghost detectives. And then they ended the universe with the New 52.
I wish you hadn't described all this, because this sounds like really bad fan fiction.
Oh my goodness!
It does,
and some of that was in the 52 macro series, and some of that was in Identity Crisis. And
I know the process for there. I don't know the exact process for those books, but I would imagine that story was a top-down story. I'm not sure that unless you're Brad Meltzer, who writes great mysteries, I guess you can walk in and say, I'm going to do a great head fake mystery, and I'm going to, rape and murder a whole bunch of characters that are, these kind of beloved 60s characters from the DCU. What do you think? I think it's more like, hey, I'd like to write a mystery, and somebody hands you some bullet points. You're like, well, it's a little creepy, but it's going to pay a lot. Okay, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, if I understand, and I might be misremembering, but I believe he was given a list of people he could kill.
Yeah.
And Sue was on the list, and Jean Lauren, ex-wife of the Adam, was on the list.
Yep.
And Carl Toons in the chat says a lot of contemporary comics are bad fan fiction. True.
Boy, you're not lying.
I like to make my fan fiction about my own characters. That's my bad fan fiction is about my guys. So
yeah, if you're gonna do fan fiction, create your own characters and then jack with those. Don't.
That's
your own.
I used to actually be on a volunteer staff member on a magazine, an online fan magazine, that was a DC fan magazine called Fanzing.
Yeah.
And I wrote history articles, and I wrote essays, and I wrote fan fiction that was part of that thing. But man, I just used it as practice and a way to just kind of, use the continuity knowledge in my brain to make something out of it, so.
Yeah. Your I guess summary of Identity Crisis reminded me of a whole lot of that stuff, and kind of the reason I don't read a whole lot of comics anymore. There's this.
Yeah.
You have to read. Oh my God, you have to read an unbelievable amount of comics to, get what's going on. Yeah, I like something simple. I actually like the Terrifics book. Basically DC's version of the Fantastic Four, and basically a big middle finger to Marvel. And I really like Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil book. I think those are a couple of fun books, and they don't spend a lot of time jerking around with a bunch of other continuity stuff. They just tell stories, and that's, I think, the way that comics are at their best.
I think there's a definite argument for something like that, and I think I think it's especially true when you look at because like I said, I'm a big continuity guy, right? But at the same time, I think sometimes we get hung up on like Batman has been personal stories for the last 20 years. Their stories, the mysteries are tangential to Bruce working through his personal issues or working through his issues as a dad, and those aren't necessarily invalid stories, but they're not really Batman stories. They're Bruce Wayne stories, because Batman stories are all about Batman solving crimes, and you look at like Alan Grant's stuff, and his stuff, like there was personal little moments, and there was stuff like that, and little continuity niblets that were worked in there, but mostly it was about whatever mystery of the month was going on, or 2 months or whatever.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to write family drama than it is crime drama, especially mystery drama, because mystery is like a Jenga tower. If the parts go up in the wrong order, shit falls down. It's much easier to write something like Robin gets the crap beat out of him and Batman overreacts. That's really so much easier than writing an intricately plotted mystery.
Well, and I'm actually in the middle of that right now. I'm doing editing the dialogue for our expositioner story that we crowdfunded last summer, and so I know exactly what you mean, making sure that all the pieces line up, and because we kind of did it Marvel style, so I'm having to go back to pages to make sure that I'm putting the clues in the right order, even though I have notes, because I want to make sure that I double check everything, and I'm just like, so my notes are a mess. All of that.
People are never going to read your notes, though. Hopefully, they're just going to read what's on the page. So just make sure that what's on the page is what ought to be there.
That's the plan. So, but yeah, and I think that there's a thing where if we have, I think especially with some characters, where if we're dealing with that continuity, where we need to keep the personal continuity very simple. Who was Batman dating 20 years ago, right? Okay. If we're flashing back, we know, it was Silver St. Cloud. That's who Batman was dating 20 years ago. Good. We know that. We're set. We're good. We don't have to hash out every moment that, Steve Englehart drew back in the day. We just know that it's a thing.
Yeah.
Right? But it has more to do with, I think, the history of Gotham should take more precedence over the history of Batman, in my opinion.
That was the thing that I thought undercut the character about the whole Court of Owls thing. Monkeys aside, Batman's always sold as the world's greatest detective, and you've got the sprawling criminal operation operating out of his hometown. When he's surprised, I'm like, dude, you need to turn in your detective badge, or at least something going on there,
Right. Well, and here's one of the things too. Like when they started introducing that, I didn't finish watching the Gotham series.
Yeah.
But they started introducing those elements in young Bruce's life. Okay, that kind of makes sense, right? Where Bruce he's coming in, he's learning about the thing and all that kind of stuff. It's not so as he's discovering and learning his detective skills, he's also learning about this great conspiracy that his father was trying to open up on. Okay, so maybe even, and I didn't finish watching the series, maybe even got his globe-trotting adventures are a way of him back-ending around it, and year one becomes a combination of fighting the mob and fighting the Court of Owls. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
If Batman's been in town more than a year and hasn't already discovered the Court of Owls, then I want a different detective. I Chuck Dixon's Green Hornet over here.
Yeah, Then say Batman, you came up against a really good case. Who would you call? Can we talk to that guy just first and cut you out of the deal? Can't you just sit in your basement and figure out how you're gonna murder all your friends a little bit longer? Give us a break.
Yeah, I know.
Bring on the real smart guy.
It was crazy, but yeah. So anyway, all of that aside, I'm actually really excited for the Napalm Brothers. Do you know how long Six is planning on running that campaign?
We're going to run it for 60 days.
Okay.
And the book's already done. I mean, it's lettered, it's colored, everything. He's already printed some proofs and sent them around. So as soon as the 60 days is up, we're going to print it and ship it.
Cool.
We set a really low goal. Our goal is $500. We're launching Sunday night. So, our goal, we're not here to make $1 million. We know we're just a couple of random indie guys. But if we can print, make $500 and print the book, that's all we're looking for.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. This is a total sidetrack off the previous topic, but I think the idea of talking about Vietnam vets, I don't think we get enough. I don't think we can spend enough time talking about those guys, right? I mean, like, it's a pretty common theme within fiction. Punisher was there, Rambo was there, but when I look back at the press and how all of the lies that got spread about those boys and what they came home to, I don't think we can spend enough time talking about those guys that came home.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, I have huge reservations with how we got into the war and how it was run and everything else. And Walter Cronkite is a goddamn liar. And I don't care who knows I think that. But yeah.
They were put into a tough spot and they did the best they could.
Yeah.
And when they got the chance, they came home.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how you feel about the actual war or the government. Those guys deserve respect for what happened to them. They went over there and got thrown in that crap because that was their job. And, God bless those guys. That's all I can say.
Yep, I agree 100%. But yeah, Neo says the Napalm Brothers. Yes, Sixth Scale Combat is his Twitter handle, and he is the creative genius behind that. And I don't think I have not read it, but just on terms of his art and colors, phenomenal stuff. I mean, it is the stuff comics ought to be made of. I mean, so
tag me in a link so I can look at it.
I'm sorry?
Tag me in a link so I can go look at it.
Okay, we'll do that at some point. If I get on Twitter, I'll be there a while.
I'm a little rusty at this whole internet thing, so
I was poking some hornet's nests before I came on, so I need to leave those sit for a spell.
That's pretty much just what Twitter is now. Just a bunch of mean girls whining about how other people don't live up to their standards. Yeah. It's like, blank your standards, pal.
Yeah, I have to admit I do some of that, but I also really want people to show me whether I'm living up to my standards too.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I got somebody who comes out of the woodwork to call me an ass and does it right. And I'm like, you know what? You were right. I was incorrect. Good on you.
I show up and I make dad jokes, and occasionally I'll throw a jab at somebody if they're jacking with a friend of mine. I got the weirdest reaction out of somebody recently. I threw kind of a digital punch at somebody, and the person said, "Hey, I really love Punchline. I hope things are going well for you." I'm like, "Yeah, you too, buddy." It was not the response I expected after calling somebody out on Twitter.
Yeah. No, I actually had somebody the other day. I had a similar exchange, and he's like, "Dude, people make fun of your hat, but I think it's good. I like it." Thanks. I didn't even mean to wear it during the show tonight. I just hadn't taken it off from driving,
Yeah. I just get weirdos that go, "Doug, you're fat," and it's like, okay, I'm fat.
Is that a surprise? Yeah, keep going.
Tell me something I didn't know. I mean, you got me. I'm fat.
I think this is the side note. People will occasionally try to make fun of me because I'm a goofy looking bastard, right? And I'm like, do you really think I go through life not knowing that I look like a Muppet?
Yeah, I've got a friend that's an actor. He was supposed to be, phoning in for a table read today, and he's got an acting job come up. I said, "Oh, did they discover a new STD and they need a new face for it, or what are you doing exactly?" He said, "Haha, I'm the STD sufferer, not the actual STD." So I win. Dude makes $200 a day when he's acting. I'm like, oh, good for you, man.
Yeah, that's not too bad. But.
And the thing is, he got started doing that. He picked up a book. I swear to God, it's one of those dummies books. It's acting for dummies. I'm like, really? This worked? Good for you.
Yeah. If you're at it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Doug. Also, speaking of projects, and Napalm Brothers, go out and read that, people, or back it on Sunday. But Lone Wolf. How's that coming along? Legends is I hear it's getting close, right?
It's getting close. We've got one guy, his art is done, but the scanner he uses, the guy is out of town to scan his artwork in. So he's hoping that next week that he should be able to get that scanned in, and we can start doing all the layouts for the book.
So, does he know that Staples has big bed scanners?
I don't know if he does or not.
Yeah, because I've my buddy, one of our partners, Barry Tetz, he has a big bed scanner. But when I can't get a hold of Barry, I'll spend the 70 cents to go scan it.
See, like he might live somewhere like me. If it wouldn't be worth gas money for me to drive to a print.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I live in a town where it has a Staples. It's like 5 miles from my house, so
I'd have to drive like an hour to get to a Staples or Staples equivalent.
Yeah, or Staples equivalent.
Wow.
Staples compatible.
Yeah.
That's brutal. I work in not exactly a strip mall, but in a big pad site with a lot of different stuff on it. Whenever somebody says, "Where's your store?" I have to tell them it's next to the Pluckers and the Chili's. It's right down from the Best Buy. So yeah, I've got the other side of it though. Depending on if I want to cross Austin, at some point I have to time it because you can hit traffic here anytime, day or night. It's a little maddening.
Yeah, I was one of those things too, where like I live in a city. Scottsbluff's the largest city in West Nebraska, but there's less than 30,000 people in the county.
Yeah.
So, our town's 5 miles square, basically, right? So, it's 25 square miles for the Scottsbluff-Gehring area. So, we're in an urban area by, like, technical definition, but I can drive, 15 miles and be in a place or 15 minutes and be in a place where it doesn't look like anyone's been there in 100 years.
Oh, that's cool.
It's nice. It's nice. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I can walk to work, but I also can get out of town pretty easy. So I like it.
Good.
But I wouldn't. I get spoiled from things like Staples. So.
Very cool.
But yeah. And now you are also working on the second Lone Wolf. And what are we looking at time frame on that?
Jameson has all 24 pages penciled and about half of them inked. So if he keeps working like he is now, maybe another month and a half, we should be able to start coloring and lettering maybe.
And are you going to put that up on a crowdfunding, or are you just going to sell it from the store?
I haven't made up my mind yet. I might do a crowdfund, just kind of like that we're doing with this book. I want the book to be finished. I'm tired of. I don't want to be one of those guys. Legends of Lone Wolf burnt me out on having to wait. I don't want people to have to wait. I don't like waiting. I want my book to be done before I go to launch. So it'll definitely be done when, whatever we do.
That's a good plan. And, people only know what you tell them. We just opened up this comic shop and people come in and look around and go, oh, you got sports, records, comics, vinyl, all kinds of crazy stuff. I said, yeah, we've been working on this for 8 months. I've been around. The store's been open about 6 weeks. You can do all that prep work. You can get all the pages, finished, and then just say, hey, here's a new book. Buy it. You don't have to drag people through the process mostly.
Yeah, we're in a situation. We're actually in, like I said, we crowdfunded last summer for ours, and we ended up having to extend the production date just because our teams run into some personal problems and everything. So for us, the Expositioner Tale. So I know exactly. I mean, I'm right there with you. And I just hated it getting there with it, but I don't know what else to do. You just got to push forward when you're in the middle of it. So I know there's 2 big projects that we're looking at this year that I'm directly a part of that we're wanting to get physical books for. One is a spin-off from our webcomic. Well, I guess technically they both are, but one takes place within the webcomic continuity over spring break for these high school kids and from their junior year, and they take a group of 3 of the kids take a spring break trip to hell. One of the kids is a half demon, and so they're going down to see his grandfather who lives in hell, and so he invited his friends because he just hates going to visit his granddad because his granddad's just this mean ornery cuss of a guy, and he's just like, I'm just so uncomfortable. You gotta come along. And okay, sure, why not? We get to come back from hell, so let's go ahead and go. It's never, how often does that come up? And so it's kind of a supernatural comedy with a twist in that. And our regular Forces artist right now, Rolf, is doing the pencils. My son Taliesin is doing the inks on it, and it's we are hoping to have that all put together this summer. The books about half of the pencils are done, so that's where we're at with the production right now. But I'm pretty stoked for that. Then our other one is one I'm actually working on with Carl, who was in the chat earlier. I'm not sure he's still hanging out or not, but he and I are doing a project called Welcome to Lincoln, Mr. Little, and Chad, who's our hero student of Forces, graduates, gets an apprenticeship job at a high school, and that is as a superhero sidekick, and they relocate him to Lincoln, Nebraska. And so it's this diesel punk, high plains superhero take that I've had in my head for a while, and I'm excited for it. Carl's got this really great. He's got just this really great. In fact, I'll go ahead and show the first page here. He's got. This
I love Carl's style, man.
Oh, man.
Like that '70s anime style.
Yeah, it's definitely got that, but it's also got such a fun blend of that like 60s, 70s manga, early manga, Astro Boy kind of stuff, mixed with like the 30s Max Fleischer kind of feel. And
that's cool.
And it's here's page 1, which is where we're at here. And I'm coloring it and lettering, of course, and we're just doing flat colors and just letting that line work shine quite a bit on there. And it's really fun too, because like I'm in West Nebraska, whereas the story set out there in the East, but it's set in 2006, so we're gonna have some time period stuff that's in there, and this actually is a real road that you could take a raised bridge into on O Street there in Lincoln, and so we're gonna have a real fun with playing our fictional universe, our fictional version of it, with Carl's style, and I'm just really excited for how that's coming along. But that we're looking at for late 2020, early 2021 on that. So
that's pretty cool. I'm doing something that may or may not be in the world with Punchline. I've got a fake Golden Age character coming back after being away from the world for a while, and he's kind of shocked to be in the world of 2020, and he finds out that a bunch of his old buddies have died, not by accidental means recently. So I'm basically writing a story with the original pitch of Watchmen. You know, a Golden Age character shows up and finds out that his friends are being murdered, so he looks into it. And I think we got about 50 pages penciled so far, and I've inked a chunk of it. I think
So are you doing all the art on it, or is that somebody else you're working with?
I've got another guy who's doing the art. Well, I forget his name off the top of my head. Another one of the Brazilian guys that I work with. And then I've got a story that is showing up in one of the Antarctic Press books. I had pitched a high fantasy medieval thing called Quarter, about somebody who is a quarter elf and is embarrassed by having little elf ears, and she's dealing with anger issues, and it's her having some slice of life stuff as she works for this temple, and she goes around as the temple's enforcer, just kind of flattening things. So it's action, racism, high fantasy stuff. Cool. And I'd done a 4-page thing there. I'd written that, and Brian Denham had drawn it, and we shopped it around, and just nobody was interested. We did a little 4-page proof of concept thing, and it looks really neat. But Brian got a hold of me, and he said, "Oh my God, I'm working on this book at AP, and we're so short on some pages. Can I stick some of your? Can I stick that quarter thing in here?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." It'd be nice to have somebody aside from you and me and some submissions editors look at it. So that's popping up. So doing cool stuff.
And so is that going to be as a backup on something, or?
That was a little 4-page thing there. They're sticking it in one of the Antarctic Press anthologies. I have no idea which one, but we did that 2 or 3 years ago, and it's been dead ever since. So I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, if you hear about which one it is, share that out on the Twitch spot, whatever, or Facebook, because I'm really interested in that. I have a limited pull of Antarctic stuff that I get in my local shop. So
I can. I'll see if I can find one and send you a copy. It's a cool little story, but it's a 4-page story, so there's it's not exactly War and Peace there, but it's I tried to tell the character's origin in 1 page. I really like that Grant Morrison All-Star Superman approach to introducing a character and getting the ball rolling in a hurry. So the first page is her 1-page origin story, and then there's a little 3-page story, and then it's wrapped up and in and out. But I'd really hope that we could sell that somewhere, because I thought that'd be a lot of fun. But I don't think the market for books like Pathfinder or stuff like that is as big as you ever want it to be.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Yep.
Because I think and maybe that's just me, but I'd like the market for everything to be as huge as possible. So that way, people are like, oh, hey, I would love to buy that from you. I know I've had at cons and stuff, we've had a somewhat difficult time selling our classic, superhero kind of fare. And maybe it's just the area we're in, but some are really keen on it, and some people are like, oh, that seems so samey. I'm like,
yeah,
you can't buy that at your shop, except in the dollar bin, I suppose.
Yeah. I did a show in Arkansas, and it was a pretty awesome experience. I had a good time, but there was a couple of people that basically just came up and looked at it and went, "Books? What am I supposed to do with these?" Like, I don't know. Look at them.
There's them.
there's a segment of people that are kind of surprised that people still make comics. So
yeah, I think that's true.
Aren't these just all movies now? It's like, well, not this one. $20. That's how much it is.
Why don't you read it and tell everyone how awesome it is, and maybe I can sell the rights.
Yeah. Yep. That'd be cool. I've gotten a local guy who really wants to shoot the opening scene from Punchline, where a dying hero runs into a kid in a cemetery, and we might shoot that at some point. I wrote a short film we're talking about shooting sometime this spring, so we'll see how we like working together.
Yeah, no, I really like that first issue. I told I can't remember if you were on when I was, or if it was just when Matt was on talking about how I'd seen the name of the book floating around Twitter or whatever, but when I sat down and actually like read the first issue of Punchline, I just got like pages in, and I'm like, that's it. Here's my money. Just
That's very kind of you.
It was really, I mean, it really sinks into that scenario in the beginning, and I just think it's great. I haven't been disappointed with a single damn thing in that book, and I get disappointed pretty easy. So
I was surprised. The next guy up to do Batman stuff has a character in the Batman books called Punchline. I'm like, oh, cool. I like that name. Maybe more people will accidentally find our book now.
Yeah, looking for something, just accidentally come across it.
Yeah, go ahead and Google Punchline in comics and see what pops up. Give it a shot.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yep.
Serendipitous, as it were.
I hope so.
So
I haven't got a chance to read it yet, but everybody just constantly talks about how good it is. So I'm going to check that out here really soon. The word of mouth on it, dude, is great.
Yeah, thanks. I've been writing for a long time, and I've worked on a lot of different projects. It's nice to work on something people like. Because, so many projects I've worked on, people were like, oh, what else have you got? That's when you're making entertainment, that's just kind of part of the gig, You show up in some things, you give it your best shot every time, but some things work and some things just do not work.
Yeah. I think that's definitely the case. And I know I'm sort of still in that boat where I'm trying to find, even though we've been doing this forever, it's still trying to find the niche for people that'll kind of fit that. Because, there's 30 or so people that seem to dig on the webcomic when we update it, but which is cool. But that's not the same as somebody who's going to be like, yeah, I'll spend half an hour reading this chapter of your webcomic, but I'm not sure I really want to spend $4 on a paper comic.
Yeah. We have, I think I've put stuff on Webtoon before, and that's not bad. That has a huge audience. I'm probably going to chop up Punchline and put that on Webtoon at some point. There's another one that we've got our books on that it's kind of cool. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a relatively new site, and it's ad supported. And the thing I like most about it is when I talk to the guys, they said, yeah, here's an advance against royalties. Here's a check for $500. I'm like, well, thanks, dude. My first thought is, you really don't do this comic book thing a whole lot, do you? Usually when you pay freelancers in advance, they just totally disappear. It's like, hey, I got $500. I'll see you guys in a month. Go get face down in the gutter or whatever it is we do. When Tim Lim hired me to letter his Black Ops book, he said, what's your page rate for lettering? I told him, and he goes, oh, you got a friends and family rate? I was like, yeah, sure. Here's that friends rate. He goes, okay. I just sent you $500. I'm like, no, you don't do that with freelancers. When you pay them up front, they wander off. Don't do that.
Well, maybe
when you get the pages. Yeah.
So, yeah. Speaking of Tim Lim, man, I'm excited for his products this year, man. They look so fun.
His stuff's pretty entertaining. Him and Mark really come up with some interesting concepts. As I was lettering Black Ops, my job on that book was just to letter the book. It wasn't to totally rewrite it. But when we're done, when my part of the job was finished, I said, look, I know that you guys have done your research because you've dragged me through every bit of it on these pages. You really have to think about cutting this shit a little bit. I mean, I really like your work, but I almost had to just cut some of the characters out and move them around to make room for word balloons. There's a limit to what people can digest per balloon. So, think about it. And he went back and read it, and he said, oh shit, dude, you're kind of right. So he went through and after we talked, he did a little bit of a rewrite, and I think he was, I at least hope he was a little happier after that, because I'll do the job I'm hired for, but I can't help myself. Sometimes my opinion comes out, and I'm like,
Yeah. Well,
ooh, if you go back and try to
I,
read X-Men 1 or Fantastic Four 1, that was the stuff that Lee did, and Stan Lee, rest his soul, he really liked the sound of his own voice, and those characters just rattled on. And that's an aesthetic that was popular at the time. It's not so popular anymore, But it was a cool gig. I liked, but I was like, oh my god, you're really giving me a workout with this lettering nonsense.
Yeah, I actually think that like there's a total difference in the dialogue between the volume 1 and volume 2.
Yeah,
I think it actually works really well in volume 1, just because it feels like it's all set up like you're reading a report.
yeah,
And reports like governmental reports, they get the tone really, really well.
yeah.
All
It gets the environment across, and it gets interesting stuff across. It's pretty cool.
But I think that when you look at the second volume, it's truncated, and they're still able to maintain a lot of that feeling. But because of the nature of the story, you don't have to care about all of those other details. It's already kind of read in, and I think that works out really well too.
So you read the Black Ops book?
Oh yeah. I love them.
So the second one, we were sitting at lunch. Tim is in the neighborhood, and he came over, and we had a chat, and we'll get together for lunch once a month, me and him and Matt. And we're sitting there talking. He's like, we got these like 2 or 3 stories. I can't figure out how to get them in the book. And I said, well, why don't you just do a flip book? So depending on the order in which you read the story, you get a little bit different outcome from it, and you get different points of view, and you can have these storylines kind of weave in and out of each other. And he's like, oh my god, that's awesome. And I didn't really have the heart to tell him that that people put out flip books, and it was not my idea, but it's an approach I've seen a couple of times. I didn't really have the heart to say, yeah, I'm a dumbass.
It hasn't been used in a long time, though. I can't think the last time I saw.
You can look back and you can see some early free comic book day books. You'll see this feature on one side and that feature on the other side. So it's just a different way to put the material in people's hands.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the last time I saw one where the stories met that way. That's probably, at least as far as I can remember, I think it's been like 97 the last time I remember them using that like narratively.
Yeah, well, that's the part of the thing about being a genius, hiding your sources.
That's hilarious. But no, I really do. I think one of the things I just love is that the USAGI books are a low key in the same universe as the Walmite stories.
Yeah.
I can't get over how much fun that is. Even though it's not entirely the same continuity, but it's very, there's.
We've been on the down low, sort of working on a big crossover between all of our books and trying to figure out how to make it work. And I think that's probably going to come to a head sometime this year.
Well, and I was actually last time you guys were on, after everyone left, Brian stayed behind and talked a little bit about it, and so. But I'm excited to see how that plays out.
I hate to talk about books before they come out. It's a little bit like saying, hey, look at me, I'm about to go on a diet. And until you actually do it, nobody gives a shit. But, once the books come out, I'll be happy to chat with them now. But as far as I know, we're still at the script stage. We still haven't gotten the art produced yet. But,
Yeah. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I know part of that has to do with Brian's schedule and everything else going on, too. And
he's a busy dude. I'm sorry I missed him at San Diego this past year.
Well, he has a fairly important real job too, so
yes,
I can't take him away from that. So
I would hope not.
Yeah. But yeah. So it's still fun, and I'm just having so much fun seeing all these different projects come together, and it's neat being able to have people like yourself on to kind of talk about the process and the history and all that kind of stuff of not just of the worlds within the comics, but the worlds that created the comics. that's a fun thing to do for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to come on and have a platform and, chat with an amiable host. I don't want to, usually online is one fist fight after another one. It's nice to not be doing that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things we have is even if there are differences of opinion, I think we can understand that at least we can try to understand the nature of the art that's going on. That's not those opinions. And,
I'm much more let's find something we agree about to talk on, rather than let's find something we disagree on. Spend an hour fighting on that. Because really, I've never seen an internet fight change anybody's mind. I've met about 3 people in my life that would actually change their mind if you gave them a more compelling argument, and those people don't spend all day online. So
they're too busy doing real work.
Yeah, or at least just avoiding bullshit.
Yeah, there you go. So, well, yeah. I feel like I should ask you something, Doug, but I think I kind of asked the important questions, I can't think of any unimportant ones right now.
Oh, I've got unimportant questions. I'm full of stupid questions. So, what happens the next time your brother calls you to go pick up a car?
Maybe I ask for the money up front.
There you go. That's always a good plan.
I'm still getting paid some because my brother, he's good like that. He told the guy, said, well, he took time out of his day, so he's got me covered.
That's good.
I might not be so eager to do it though.
It just all depends. Oh, I remember a very unimportant question that I meant to ask you, Bill.
Sweet.
This is totally out of left field, right? But
okay.
Is Bill Williams, right?
Yep.
And I'm assuming that's William Williams.
It is.
Right? Which is a fairly common Welsh naming convention. Are you, in fact, ethnically Welsh?
Maybe. My mom, if you trace her genetics far enough back, you'd hit Italy. And my dad's side of the family, once you get past the pain in the ass Texans starting range wars part of the family history, you end up in that part of the world. And I've heard that there's a little bit of Welsh in my bloodline somewhere along the way. But no, my full name is William Zane Williams II. So my dad named me after him. So
okay.
It is also kind of a Welsh thing too. When I looked into it and found that out once upon a time.
Yeah, well, Rhys, right? I am ancestrally Welsh. My grandfather was the first generation born in this country. He was born in 1905, and so I'm only third generation American off the boat. So. So yeah, I mean, I care about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's a point of curiosity and interest to me. But like of the British Isles nations, like very few people talk about the Welsh or the Cornish, and so it's one of those.
Well, it's hard to talk about the Welsh because everything that they do is unpronounceable.
That may be true.
Yeah. A little bit.
So, I actually, my youngest boy is Taliesin, and it's a Welsh name, and my wife picked it out, but it was one of those things where we thought it was really cool when he was born because we're into the whole heritage thing, and and now. But now we've spent, 16 years just telling people to call him Tall.
Yes.
Because they're just like, how many letters? You just pronounce every letter and you say it right. It's
Well, it's good. No, my grandmother, my dad's dad, is the Williams name came from him, and he was, I don't want to say Cajun, but more or less, so I have no idea how long it took somebody to get, from there to here. But my family's been in Texas for like 7 or 8 generations. That's kind of, That's kind of where I stake my flag these days.
Yeah. And of course, Doug, your family's been here for a couple hundred years, right?
Yeah, on the Garrett side, we've been here since before the United States existed.
That's good.
Yeah.
We've been here
my
forever.
My mother's mother is a Mattan, and the Mattans predate the United States, but I think they're the only branch of the family that does. And around half of my lineage and about 3/4 of my children's lineage are all since 1850.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're pretty, and nearing toward 1860, a lot after the Civil War. So, even I have Irish that left during the end of the famine, and was after the Civil War. So, but yeah, so we're young lineages here in the land of the free. But so yeah,
Cool.
yeah. A weird way to end, but it is 9 o'clock.
It is.
And I know that I have other things that duty calls today. But so guys out in the chat, if you want to, go ahead and check. I'll leave the link again in the chat for Punchline on Indiegogo. Check that out. Also, I believe you guys are still on demand for Lone Wolf Legends, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. We've got the Punchline campaign has a couple of trades. You can buy as little as a couple of PDFs, or you can get a couple of hardcovers if you want.
Yeah, that hardcover is such a nice feature.
It's pretty too, or at least the last one was. I haven't seen the new one because we haven't made them yet.
Right. I'm in a situation with I love my floppies so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to get that. But it's a great way. One of the great things about the campaign is it's a great way if you haven't picked up Punchline, or if you got the free comic book day edition that they had last year, and you're just like, this is really good. How do I buy all of it? You can buy it on Indiegogo. It's
It's your one-stop shopping right there.
It's a one-stop shop for all things Punchline, and that's a pretty good deal. And so Lorenzo just doxed his own time zone. My goodness. Now I have a 1 in 6 chance of knowing where you are.
I narrowed it down to a place in Austin with terrible traffic. That could be anywhere in Austin.
There you go, Bill. But yeah, Legend Lone Wolf is still on demand. And how long is that book before we go?
That book is 100, and it's over 110 pages. Give or take a few.
Look at that.
It's got a bunch of different writers, a bunch of different artists, all indie guys. Really good guys. We all don't agree on everything, but we don't have to. We all like comic books. So I'm really thankful they all pitched in and helped make this book.
Yep.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I'm excited to get my copy. I know the first issue of Lone Wolf was one of my favorite indie books in 2018, and still probably top 30 of all comics in 2018. So I enjoyed the heck out of it. But yeah. So, but yeah, I'm excited for that, and of course, Punchline is officially my second favorite superhero universe. The first is, of course, my own, which you can check out at forcesofgoodandevil.net. Tomorrow we'll be dropping the second chapter of National Villainy, and if you guys who are watching in the chat want to know more about it, I went on a rant about it in the first 10 minutes before anyone else got here. So, 10 minutes after we close, you can go back and watch the archive and see me mutter about for a little while. It was not the most exciting show I've been part of.
Hopefully we picked it up. You're not talking to yourself anymore.
Oh my goodness, it's so much nicer to have somebody to talk to, because me, man, I already know what's in my head, so I have a hard time, outing with it. But there you have it. But we're going to go ahead and call it. Guys, thanks so much, Bill, Doug, for coming on. You guys in the chat next week, we are having on Tonic Mole and George Alexopoulos. So
Awesome.
hour 1, Tonic is hour 2. Although I'll probably invite Tonic on for hour 1 too. I just won't talk to him. So.
both of those guys are good guys. I like them both.
I like how you've already put somebody in timeout.
I'll just ignore things he says. Just shut him. Just maintain control over the gallery that way. You're in charge. That's thing.
Good.
And then when it comes time to hail, they know who they're hailing.
There you go.
There you
go. Sorry. It was a shot, but I have a little show, and who's going to stop me?
There you go. I like that.
Sorry, Doug. I'm gone into my nonsense. It's late. I'm getting silly. So, Neo says Punchline is backed. So, there you go.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Thank you, Neo. I appreciate my show helped to sway someone, I guess is what I'm saying. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end the show. I really am this time. It's kind of a Midwestern thing. Long goodbyes. But thanks, guys, for coming on, and we will see you all next time around.
Bye.
Thanks.